Welcome back to CJLO Sports here on CJLO 1690 AM. I'm very happy to introduce our guest for this week, filmmaker Mitch Lee, who's currently working on a project that follows the journey of University of Calgary basketball player David Kapinga. Mitch, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks, Matthew, for having me.
Yeah, of course. I came across your documentary from the Instagram page you guys have going, and just scrolling through, it really looked like something that was super interesting. So I'm hoping maybe you could walk me through a little bit about what the documentary is about.
Sure. Well, it's about the story of David Kapinga, obviously, and we call it the walk on. And it's really because technically he walked on to the University of Calgary and got a spot on the team, and eventually led his team to the national title last year, and he was the MVP of the Nationals. And what's interesting about it is, obviously, that is kind of the cornerstone or the main theme that runs through this documentary is his road to success as an MVP of the Nationals and his team winning for the first time ever in university history, winning a national championship. But it's also his story of his family and his upbringing and coming to Canada as a refugee and then coming to Calgary and learning to play basketball here in Calgary and then going on to have some great success.
How did you come across David? How did he catch your eye?
Well, we're part of the basketball scene here in Calgary, and I actually got to meet with him at a training facility in Calgary called Macon Hoops. It's a new training facility with bunch of doctor dishes and shooting machines, and it's an awesome place for people in Calgary to train and to get reps and shoot and train for basketball. And he was there for the grand opening, and I got to meet him and hear a little bit more of his story. He was just fresh off the national title win, which everyone in Calgary, in terms of who were into basketball, knew about. And he was just back from playing with Team Canada actually at the games in Australia. So he was riding high, and I got to meet him that way and got to know him a little bit. And that's when I first met him.
Yeah, I remember watching that national championship game, and obviously he hits that game-winning shot driving to the basket. It's a pretty unreal play, and but besides that, I didn't know that much about his story, and kind of the clips I've seen online that you guys have posted, it kind of walks you into a story that has more than meets the eye, obviously. What was that like to follow David around, to learn more about his life as you kind of filmed him and followed him?
Yeah, it was really cool. He's a super down-to-earth kid, humble. He's really funny, very personable, and you just realize he's where he is because of his character, his hard work, and he kind of makes it easy for people to root for him because he's not this 6'10" long, super athletic, crazy athlete dude. He's pretty normal looking. You look at him, he looks like maybe a soccer player, or just he's barely 6 feet, and Dave will get mad at me for saying that, but he's pretty unassuming when you see him, and it was great to get to know. We just got back from Kentucky. We went down. David spent a couple years in high school down there, and then he spent his first university or college year down there at an NAIA school in Kentucky. And we got to meet some of his old coaches, and everyone just speaks so highly of him. We met his old principal at the high school, and she was raving about him, showing us photos of they'd won their area to go to play in state, and that was the state championships, and that's a big deal down there in Kentucky. Kentucky's like, the mecca of basketball in the U.S. and one of them. So, yeah, it was really neat to get to know him a little bit more and just, solidify what we already knew about David, which was he's a solid dude and tons of character, and he made a lot of friends along his journey.
And you mentioned that you're a part of the basketball scene in Calgary. You kind of followed that, and you're at those events. And obviously, with the University of Calgary winning the national championship last year, and you're still following the team this year as they kind of move into playoffs. What are you seeing from David? You've been following him now for a little bit.
Like, what do I see from a basketball perspective?
Yeah, and kind of, I guess now that you've been following him around for some more than a couple months now, but what have you kind of seen from him as terms of like evolving as a person or your understanding of him as a basketball player?
Well, I think the first thing is just how mature he is. He's only 23 years old, and you feel like you're talking to an old soul. He's super mature. He's got his head about him. His whole team does, really, and they're very focused on repeating, and they feel a little bit slighted. You know, they're ranked. I think at the time, maybe they've changed their rankings to number 2, but at the time they were ranked number 3, and they went 20-0 in their conference this year, coming off a national title. So winning the nationals, go 20-0, and they're ranked 3rd, and so they got something to prove, and they're incredible. Their defense is unreal, but to see his maturity and how he's leading his team, he's the captain. His nickname's Cap. That's part of his last name too, Kapinga. But Cap is he's the MC. He's the orchestrator. He's the captain on the floor and off the floor. And when we see how he directs the team, it's pretty impressive to see the maturity level that he possesses. So that's, I guess, what's kind of cool to see and to watch this year. And they just finished off the Westman last night. In the quarterfinals, I guess it was, and they handled them like they were a men's league team, and it was and UW is pretty good. So yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to watch.
And from a filmmaking perspective, what was it like to kind of have the chance to shoot a sport that obviously I feel like you're pretty passionate about?
Oh, yeah, that was a dream. That was a big part of it. My day job, what I really do for a living is I score films. I write music. I'm a composer. And so I'm working on a Netflix film currently. It'll be out this summer. I'm writing the music for that. I have a film that's going to theaters beginning of May called El Chicano. It's coming into the U.S. to theaters. I just finished scoring that. So to jump kind of trades or disciplines to go and to direct is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and a big motivation of that was to be able to do that with my brother Marshall. And he's a filmmaker. He lives in Nashville, so we don't get to see each other much. But to have this opportunity to have this story come across our plate and go, let's do this, and create and do this project together. That was a big dream of mine, to work with Marshall and to jump on the other side of the camera. I'm usually involved in the post-production, but to be involved in this whole process, it's really opened my eyes to how hard it is to make a documentary. And we're only making a short. This isn't a feature-length documentary. A feature-length is typically an hour to hour and a half. So our goal is to make this under 20 minutes, but this is super challenging. Our rough cut right now is about 35 minutes, and there's so much good stuff in there. It's going to be really hard to get it down to the time that we need to get it down to. So it's been a really cool journey to see how much work it goes on, and things have changed as we started off. I don't know how much time we got, but we started off, part of this documentary was going to be talking about the Calgary 88s. The Calgary 88s were Calgary's first professional basketball team. And during 1988 to 1992, it was a league that was called the World Basketball League, and it was for athletes 6'5" and under. And had some shady stories how it was funded, and it kind of folded eventually. But we were going to include part of that as our documentary as well, and because there's some ties, to David with that. So it's been a real challenge to kind of figure out what our story is, how we want it to come across, and how to do it in the most effective and the most efficient way possible.
And like you said, you try to cut that down to 20 minutes from 35. And I'm sure you could make a documentary from all the clips you just posted on Instagram. And to think that there's going to be so much meat in this documentary, I'm really excited to watch the full thing once it's out. What are you hoping that audiences take away from this film?
I just want kids in Calgary here to be inspired. David is a hero for us in this city, and he's a great role model. And I want to celebrate. The goal is to celebrate basketball in Calgary. In our country, basketball obviously is on the rise, and a big part of that is, what's coming out of Ontario, specifically the Toronto area. And it was to kind of put a little bit of shine on, there's some great stuff happening here in our city in Calgary, and it's basketball is booming, I would say, across Canada. And I would say a big part of that is because of the Toronto Raptors and what's happened since Vince Carter's come to Canada and from there. And there's actually a documentary on Netflix called The Carter Effect, and it's a really cool insight into what happened when Vince Carter came to Toronto. It's not really a basketball doc. It kind of is, but it's talking about the influence he had. But that's pretty cool to see what's happening in Canada. And so to answer your question, it would be just to give kids here in Calgary someone that they can look up to. Hockey obviously is a big sport in our city and in our province, but basketball is just every year getting close, like it's just booming. And so to have someone that we can celebrate who's found success at the level David has is really exciting.
And before we let you go, I'm hoping maybe you can just tell us, when does the documentary come out? When are you planning to have it released? And where can people go for updates?
Well, our goal is to have it done for spring. We have an agreement with TELUS. They'll have the chance to air it first on their Optic TV, but we're going to be doing screenings. We want to do little mini festivals where we do a screening and we kind of have a shooting contest, get a chance to meet David, and kind of make it a family air where you can come out, have some fun, and watch the film. So sometime in spring. We don't have a specific date, but we're looking between sometime in June, maybe as early as May. And then we'll try to screen in different cities as we can and as we have budget for. But it'll eventually end up online. But at first, we want to just do private screenings or just public screenings and celebrate different areas of. We wanted to take it to different basketball clubs and communities and share it that way. So sometime in the spring. And the best way to follow us is our Instagram account. We're kind of just solely pushing content there. We're trying to put as much stuff on there to get people excited about it. We're still trying to build our following and trying to reach out to people who enjoy basketball stories, and especially stories about an immigrant who came when he was young and was a refugee, was escaping a war-torn country like the Congo. We could do a whole documentary on what's happening in the Congo. We've gotten to understand more about what's going on there. It's incredible. So Instagram is the best way to check us out. We're just at the Walk On Doc is our handle. And yeah.
Well, thanks, Mitch, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for your time.